The 6-3 Minnesota Vikings head to Dallas to take on the 5-3 Dallas Cowboys. We're going to go ahead and preview that matchup. We look at the Dallas Cowboys through their first 8 games of the season. They've kind of had a Jekyll Hyde back to Jekyll start to their 2019. So they started off red hot with 3 straight wins before suffering 3 straight losses. And it seems that they may have found their mojo again after getting back-to-back wins against the Eagles and last Sunday night against the New York Giants. And it's easy to think, unless you're one of the beat writers or the media that is specifically covering the Dallas Cowboys, if you're on the outside looking in, it's easy to think when you think about the Dallas Cowboys, oh, stop the run game with Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott, he's going to make mistakes, so there's nothing to worry about there. Just capitalize on that and you'll be fine. But this is a much different Dallas Cowboys team than we're used to seeing in years past. And I want to start with their defense because their defense is supremely, massively underrated. And I'm not talking about where, okay, they're kind of good, but they deserve more love. I'm talking about they're one of the best defenses in the entire National Football League, and they don't get talked about nearly as much as they deserve to be. So they have a very physical front seven with Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, Robert Quinn, DeMarcus Lawrence, Sean Lee. And so when you compare that to the Vikings and their offensive line, if we see what we saw on Sunday to where Dalvin Cook rushed for 71 yards against the Chiefs, all of which came after contact, if the interior offensive line plays poorly again, then Dalvin Cook on Sunday night is looking at a long night against the Cowboys front seven. Then when you consider the fact that they like to dial up creative blitz packages once in a while, the pass protection needs to be aware of what their assignments are going to be because they're going to bring the heat every once in a while. And also, they've got playmakers in the secondary as well. Bottom line, this is an all-around great defense. I think when it comes to the Vikings offense facing opposing defenses, this is going to be the toughest matchup for the Vikings since week 4 against the Chicago Bears. And so this game is going to require quality play calling, aggressive play calling. Take what the defense gives you, and if there are any weaknesses that you see, then exploit that. Be sure to exploit it, because if we have conservative play calling where you're tiptoeing around and playing not to lose, opposing to playing to win, like we saw in the last 2 offensive possessions for the Vikings last Sunday against the Chiefs, or the entire game against the Bears in week 4, if we see that again, you will lose that game. I guarantee it. Now, next, Stephon Diggs needs to be targeted more than 4 times. So against the Chiefs, he was only targeted 4 times. That needs to go way up, considering that, especially assuming that Adam Thielen is going to be out, because hamstrings, professional athletes, is never a good combination. So I'm only assuming that he's going to be out. So Stephon Diggs, make sure you utilize your dynamic playmakers, your dynamic weapons on offense. So Stephon Diggs is obviously your first priority. But then also with Adam Thielen being out, I think your next most explosive playmaker on offense is Irv Smith Jr. So you need to make sure that you utilize your dynamic weapons on offense. And I think that will give you the best chance to succeed against this Cowboys defense. And then also, don't get cute with the backup running position. So Alex Madison needs to be the primary backup to Dalvin Cook, especially against this physical front seven of the Cowboys. If you have Amir Abdullah like you did on Sunday trying to run on 3rd and short, then it's going to be a disaster every single time. Now, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys offense. So it's easy to think Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, but it's a lot more than that. Let's start with their offensive line. Their offensive line is very physical, much like their defensive line is. They're very physical, and I feel like with most offensive lines in pass protection, I feel like when it comes to the opposing pass rush, the offensive line, usually across the rest of the league, they brace for contact. But the Dallas Cowboys offensive line, they do the opposite. They actually initiate contact. So once each individual offensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys, once they recognize their assignment of who's in their lane, who's in their zone, they will initiate contact first to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start this fight with you so you don't get leverage on me first. They're a very physical offensive line, which means great things for Ezekiel Elliott. I think Eric Kendricks is going to have a great game. He's going to blow up a lot of tackles to where Ezekiel Elliott, he may be dragging some folks, or the offensive line may be pushing guys around to where Eric Kendricks comes in and blows up plays with tackles. But I am concerned about Anthony Barr in this game, and here is why. He's a very finesse linebacker. He's had a much better year. I'm very happy to see the year that Anthony Barr has had so far this year. But when it comes to the run blocking for the Cowboys, Anthony Barr, we talk about how if he gets locked up, if he gets initiated on pass protection where he's trying to rush the passer, or even going after the running backs or whoever the hell else, then he gets locked up. But against the Cowboys, I think Anthony Barr is in danger of getting the back of his jersey on the ground. So I think that's the one concern that I have. I'm going to be paying attention to how Anthony Barr plays in that game. But if you play conservative, much like on offense, if you play conservative on your defense, then you're going to get chopped up. Now let's actually talk about their weapons, because it's not just Ezekiel Elliott. They got Amari Cooper, who has really improved as an NFL wide receiver, because in Oakland, he had a serious case of the drops. He has done a much better job in Dallas improving his catch rate percentage. So now he's a quality receiver, where Oakland, he was always talented and he would make big plays, but he would have too many cases of dropping the football. He's a much sure-handed receiver. Now in Dallas, they also have Michael Gallup, they have Randall Cobb, and once in a while, when you least expect it, you'll see Tavon Austin come onto the field for a gadget play. So they're a very explosive offense. And Dak Prescott, I would say Dak Prescott is playing, I would say he's playing good. I would just say good, because right now when you look at his stats, Dak Prescott so far on the year, he has 15 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. So a 2-to-1 ratio, not all that hot. He is prone to making mistakes once in a while. Now, if it does happen in this game, now some of it is receivers dropping passes. I remember, or in the Saints game, like when they lost 12-10, goodness, Jason Witten and Ezekiel Elliott, they fumbled the ball. Or in the case of, I think this was against the Eagles, where Amari Cooper, we talked about how he's a sure-handed receiver now. He actually did drop a pass, and it led to an interception. So if those mistakes present itself, then the defense needs to capitalize on it. But when we look at the Dallas Cowboys from top to bottom, they are an all-around complete team. I am very impressed with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they've had a high, low, and a high year through their first 8 games so far, up to the midpoint. But I think as long as the Vikings, if they can play to their potential, play to the best of their abilities, then we're looking at a tough-ass matchup, and I could see the Vikings winning this. However, if we're going to have conservative play calling, bad mismatches on the matchups, or when it comes to primetime games, when it comes to Mike Zimmer or Kirk Cousins in primetime games, if you let that affect you, then the Vikings could easily lose this game by a wide margin. So it can go either way, to where the Vikings, as long as you play up to your ability, up to your potential, this can be a great game, and I can see the Vikings winning it. But we already know how this works out. I'm not going to make a prediction on this game. I'm just going to be watching with a close eye to see how they perform. Now, moving on from that, I talked about Mike Zimmer and how, everybody knows how I feel about Mike Zimmer up to this point and how he needs to be fired. And this question got brought up to me as far as, well, who do you want to see replace Mike Zimmer? Who is going to be the replacement for Mike Zimmer? And I think that is a very fair question. And I have 3 top candidates to replace Mike Zimmer at the end of the year, assuming things don't work out. You don't not only just make the playoffs, you need to win a damn playoff game. So if that doesn't happen, then Mike Zimmer should be fired. We'll see what happens. But let's say if Mike Zimmer is fired, I have 3 top candidates to replace him. Number 1, Eric Bieniemy. So he's the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. And okay, yes, Andy Reid, he's calling the plays on offense, but he's still basically a student under Andy Reid, and the knowledge that he is gaining from him with the Kansas City Chiefs and everything that he has to learn from Andy Reid, I will take that. I would take a risk on that, because I feel that this team, the Minnesota Vikings, with the talent that we have on offense and how the league is going, you can have a lot more success with an elevated offense and a subpar defense than having an elevated defense and a subpar offense. So I think this team needs an offensive-minded head coach. And in terms of the Andy Reid coaching tree, in terms of offensive coaches, looks pretty good. Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator, not as a head coach, but Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator is a genius. We talk about Doug Peterson. He's already won a Super Bowl. That following year, after winning the Super Bowl with a backup quarterback in back-to-back years, he went out to Chicago, beat the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. Yes, it was off of a missed kick, but you still won. And if it wasn't for a drop pass by Alshon Jeffrey, the Eagles, they were marching up the field to beat the Saints at the Superdome. And then we look at Matt Nagy, who, yes, this year with the Chicago Bears, I believe this is his second year as head coach. He's under some criticism with Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback. But that first year, he made Mitch Trubisky look really well. So I think Eric Bieniemy could be a nice addition or a nice head coach. I would give him that opportunity to coach the Minnesota Vikings. Number 2, Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski, he's just in his first year as an offensive coordinator, and I talked about this on the live stream that I did yesterday with you folks that, yes, Kevin Stefanski deserved blame for how the Kansas City Chiefs game went on Sunday, conservative play calling, but at the same time, I can't help but think that Mike Zimmer and his conservative play calling, he just can't help himself from time to time that Mike Zimmer may be holding Kevin Stefanski back. Kevin Stefanski has been with this organization for forever now. He's seen the highs and the lows. He knows the good and the bads when it comes to offense. He was here when Pat Shurmur was here. I think Kevin Stefanski could be a great young mind or a great up-and-coming future head coach for this team. If he does well, he's going to be gone. And if Mike Zimmer is going to be gone, I will take a chance, unless Eric Bieniemy is to come here, I would take a chance on Kevin Stefanski because, again, without Mike Zimmer breathing down his back, Kevin Stefanski has the potential to be great. And then, if all else fails, the third option to replace Mike Zimmer. So if you lose out on Eric Bieniemy, let's say if he decides I'm going to stay with Kansas City, or he becomes a head coach elsewhere, or Kevin Stefanski, he decides to leave and we still fire Mike Zimmer, the last resort to replace Mike Zimmer is the blackest part of my ass, because I know exactly what I'm going to get from Mike Zimmer. That is absolutely nothing. All talk, rah-rah, no one believes in us. When it comes to coaching against good quality teams, Mike Zimmer will fail 100% of the time. So Eric Bieniemy, Kevin Stefanski, or the blackest part of my ass. I don't care who you replace Mike Zimmer with, just with an offensive-minded hit. Let's stop acting like, oh, my God, well, I don't want to take a chance losing Mike Zimmer because we'll be even worse. Let's stop acting like Mike Zimmer is the only qualified coach to coach this Minnesota Vikings team. There are so many coaches out there. You just got – it's a crapshoot. It's not guaranteed to work out, but I guarantee you with Mike Zimmer, you ain't winning jack with this team. So those are my three options: Eric Bieniemy, Kevin Stefanski, or the blackest part of my ass. Let me know your thoughts or any coaching options, coaching candidates out there that you would like to see. We do this 3 times a week, Mediocre or Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. Check me out on Twitter at realistic_Randy, Facebook at Realistic Randy. The next podcast will be on Monday, reacting to the outcome of Sunday's game, Vikings versus Cowboys. We'll see you then. Enjoy the game, folks.